I'd like to start by talking about what you reviewed in coming to your conclusions today. You would agree that you reviewed 3 affidavits, correct?
Yes, specifically Danny Brooks, Hayden Duran, and Andy Park.
Right, and you made a lot of conclusions about Hayden Duran's parenting, correct?
That is true.
And you never asked Hayden Duran if she would talk to you before coming to your conclusions.
No, there was no need to, and with how close Hayden was to the situation in question, she ultimately would have been emotionally compromised, so it's probably better that I didn't.
So Dr. Soto, the simple answer to my question is no, you didn't contact Hayden Duran.
No, I was not able to.
And you would agree that Jesse Duran, to your knowledge, is the only witness of what happened on August 18th.
From what I found, yes, that is true.
You didn't interview Jesse Duran.
No, counsel, you wouldn't let me interview. And once again, Jesse would have been extremely emotionally compromised, so it's probably better that I didn't. Everything that I needed was contained in those affidavits and in those exhibits.
Dr. Soto, I just want to return you to my question. You didn't interview Jesse Duran.
No, I didn't need to, and you would not let me.
So you did express interest in interviewing Jesse Duran.
Yes, it's ultimately helpful, but it's not necessary.
And after you were told that you couldn't interview Jesse Duran, you chose not to read his deposition. Is that correct?
Well, I was not provided with the deposition. Yes, I didn't read it.
So it's your testimony that the plaintiff that hired you didn't provide you
I
with the
said I did
deposition
not
of
read the
Jesse Duran.
deposition.
Excuse me?
I did not read the deposition.
I'd like to talk about the conclusions that you were able to come to.
Okay.
You would agree that there's 6 factors that increase the likelihood of violent behavior in children, correct?
Yes.
Now, 3 of these, you were unable to find any evidence to support with Jesse Duran.
Yes, but the other 3 I did locate.
Well, I want to talk first about those 3.
Okay.
There's 3 risk factors that you could not find any evidence of for Jesse Duran.
True.
Now, a 4th one that you mentioned on direct examination was presence of violent media. Is that correct?
That was the second factor, yes.
And you would agree that Hayden Duran did sit with Jesse Duran while he was playing these video games, correct?
Yes.
You found that Hayden Duran explained what was going on in these video games to Jesse, and that Jesse wasn't just playing them alone.
That's true. Hayden Duran did sit down and explain some of these video games to Jesse.
Now, a 5th risk factor was presence of firearms. Is that correct?
That is true.
I want to be clear, you found no evidence that Hayden Duran owns a firearm.
No, but I did find evidence that Hayden Duran was aware that Andy Park did.
I just want to return you to my question. You found no evidence that Hayden Duran owned a firearm.
No.
You found no evidence that Hayden Duran's ever even allowed a firearm in her home.
As far as I can tell, no.
So as you were saying, the firearm in this case was owned by Ms. Park. You did find that Hayden Duran talked to Jesse about the dangers of firearms.
Yes, more about war and violence than firearms, but yes, did have conversations with Jesse.
Well, Dr. Soto, to clarify, you found that Hayden Duran told Jesse guns are dangerous.
Objection, Your Honor. This question calls for hearsay.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
We're not using the words guns are dangerous for the truth of the matter asserted. We're using them to show the effect on the listener and to show that Hayden Duran took actions as a parent to talk to Jesse Duran.
I'm going to overrule your objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
So Dr. Soto, you found that Hayden Duran told Jesse guns are dangerous.
Yes.
You found that Hayden Duran told Jesse guns can hurt people.
Yes.
You found that Hayden Duran even talked to Jesse about the dangers of guns on August 18th, 2010.
That is true.
Because in coming to your conclusions, you reviewed a conversation that Jesse and Hayden had on August 18th, 2010 about firearms. You remember that conversation?
Yes,
You would recognize it if I showed it to you in court today?
absolutely.
Let the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel with proposed defense exhibit 1. A.
The record will reflect that.
And let the record reflect that I'm approaching the witness in turn.
Thank you.
Of course. Dr. Solo, you recognize this as a conversation between Hayden Duran and Jesse Duran?
Yes, this is one of the exhibits that I did review.
This appears to be a fair and accurate copy of that.
As far as I can tell, yes.
I just want to be clear, it says Voldemort at the top. You would agree that that's Hayden Duran?
Yes, I did find through my findings that Voldemort is indeed Hayden Duran.
Your Honor, at this time, defense motions to admit defense A into evidence.
Any objections on that, Counselor?
We'll let it in, Your Honor. No objection.
Okay, great. It will come into evidence.
No, Dr. Sola, just to clarify, the texts on the left, those are sent from Hayden Duran,
Yes, the ones with the big B.
and the texts on the right, those are sent from Jesse Duran.
That is correct.
Now, I'd like to turn your attention to the first text. If you could please read silently as I read along. Guns aren't toys,
Objection, Your
and
Honor.
you need to stay away from them.
On what grounds?
Cumulative evidence pursuant to Rule 403.
May I respond?
Yes.
Your Honor, in order for this to be cumulative, it's not cumulative for me to highlight exactly one sentence in this document. To read it all would be cumulative, but this is not unduly cumulative, which is what 403 says.
Can you respond to that?
As long as he limits it to just reading a specific that opposing counsel wishes to highlight, I will withdraw my objection.
Okay, so the objection is withdrawn, you may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. So Dr. Solo, on August 18th, 2010, you found that Hayden Duran texted Jesse and said, guns aren't toys, and you need to stay away from them. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, and Jesse replied with, yeah, I got it.
Well, Dr. Solo, I'm not asking you about what Jesse said. You found that Hayden Duran said that, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Solo. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time. Permission to approach and tender evidence.
So permitted.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Solo.
Thank you.
Your Honor, there will be no redirect examination. I just ask that Dr. Purcell be allowed to leave the stand at this time.
He is excused.
Thank you very much.
Next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the plaintiff calls Officer Dale Williams to the stand. May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please introduce yourself to the court, spelling your last name for the record.
I'm Officer Dale Williams. That's Williams.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a senior patrol officer for the Midland Center Police Department.
What education do you have that allows you to be a senior patrol officer?
Well, I'm a graduate of Sawyer College with a degree in criminal justice. After that, I completed the 16-week program at the Midland Law Enforcement Academy.
How are you involved in today's case?
I was the first responder to the 911 call regarding the shooting that took place at the Parks home on August 18, 2010.
I want to talk about that day and exactly what happened. When you first arrived at the scene, what is the first thing that you did?
Well, I arrived at the Parks home at about 9:55 in the morning. I was around the same time the paramedics got there. Because the call was about an active shooter, I needed to clear the home, make sure the shooter was no longer active. So I instructed the paramedics to remain outside until that was completed.
Once you walked into the Parks home, what did you see?
I walked through the front door right into the living room. I saw two children who were later identified as Sydney Park. She was lying on the ground with a gunshot wound to her head. The other child was Jesse Duran, who was sitting in a chair in the living room.
You said Sydney had a gunshot wound to her head. Did you see a gun anywhere?
Not far from where Jesse was sitting in the living room, on the floor, there was a 6-shot 9mm revolver.
Once you saw the gun, how did you proceed with your investigation?
I went on to clear the rest of the home, make sure that no one else was there. When that was completed, I waved in the paramedics to attend to Sydney Park. Unfortunately, they were not successful. Sydney was pronounced dead at the scene.
While the paramedics attended to Sydney, where was Jesse Duran?
Jesse was removed from the living room and placed at the dining room table under the care of two officers whom I instructed not to speak with Jesse because neither his parents or Sydney Park's parents had arrived at the house yet.
When did the parents arrive?
At about 10 o'clock that morning, Andy Park, Sydney Park's mother, arrived first. About a half hour later, Hayden Duran, Jesse Duran's parent, arrived at the Park's home, and Hayden was informed that her child was a suspect for the death of Sydney Park.
Officer Williams, why was it that Jesse was being held as a suspect?
Well, based on our investigation up to this point, Jesse and Sydney were the only two in the home during the shooting. In addition to that fact, Jesse wrote a statement confessing to shooting Sydney Park.
Your Honor, permission to approach opposing counsel with Plaintiff's Exhibit 4. Permission to approach the witness. Officer Williams, what did I just hand you?
You just handed me the statement that Jesse wrote confessing to shooting Sidney Park.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of that statement?
It seems to be intact, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, plaintiff moves to admit plaintiff's foreign to evidence, and pursuant to the pretrial order, all objections to this document have been waived.
Yes, Your Honor, we would agree to that statement.
Okay, it is moved in.
May I publish the record? Officer Williams, what did you learn from this statement?
Well, I learned that Jesse shot Sidney Park in the head from the statement. I also learned that Jesse's parent, Hayden Duran, taught Jesse that real guns were like the guns he found on his video games.
Your Honor, at this time, I have no further questions. May I approach the witness and retrieve evidence?
Cross-examination, Your Honor.